the F1 Focus Podcast with Welman and Hendrik Verwoerd.
Welcome to the Formula One Focus Podcast with my friend Hendrik Verwoerd. This week we're going to be looking at the Miami Grand Prix. Towards the end of this video, we're going to look at some special liveries that we're expecting. But before we get to that, we're going to be talking about Oscar Piastri now being in the lead of the championship for the first time and what effect that's going to have on McLaren's, the state of affairs, the civil war that's brewing there. Welcome back, Hendrik.
Thanks, MV. Yeah, the dynamics in that team is certainly going to be interesting. I see even even Zach Brown is now saying he's expecting the two of them to get entangled at some point this season, and when that happens, they will deal with it. So certainly, I think the dynamic between the two drivers at McLaren, I think, is going to be an interesting aspect of the rest of the season.
A couple of things that stood out, and you just mentioned it before that I never realized. Firstly, he's now leading the championship, Oscar Piastri, for the first time. And in the past, Lando was always sort of favored, even though they were supposed to be equal. Number one, do you think he'll be able to handle the pressure of leading the championship? Has he got form for that?
Piastri. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I don't think anything phases him at all. He's as solid as a rock as they come. I think he's going to enjoy, being in that position. He obviously has, a track record of championships in the junior categories. He won the last 3 junior categories that he's competed in, including the Formula 3 and Formula 2 championships, first time out in his rookie season. So, I think he's quite comfortable leading a championship, a world championship. Of course, the pressure is a bit higher in Formula 1, but I don't think he will get fazed by that at all. In fact, I think, and Zach Brown has also said, he expects Piastri to get stronger as the season progresses. And we have discussed this on many occasions, the personality differences between him and his teammate Lando Norris. Lando seems to be affected by outside factors more than Piastri. So, yeah, I think that he's now going to feel that he's let free to race because he is now leading the championship. There's no more holding back because you've got a more senior teammate, and maybe the senior teammate is the more likely to be challenging for the title, and that sort of thing. And yes, you've pointed out that Piastri has been the junior partner almost, not necessarily the number 2 driver, but the junior partner of the two for the last few seasons. He has always been the one that has received the upgrade second after Lando has received it, including last year's big upgrade at Miami, which Lando, of course, took to his first victory. Lando had that upgrade and Oscar didn't have it last year. So what are the team now going to do with this situation when they do bring upgrades? Piastri now leading the championship. Are they going to give him the upgrades first? Is Lando going to be happy with that? I'm not going to say, this is going to cause like civil war or anything in the team, but it's an interesting, I think, shift in the dynamics between the two drivers and in the way in which the team is going to handle this. So it's certainly something to keep an eye out for.
Interesting. There was a lot of speculation over the weekend, for example, if Lando now, leaves in a half and a puff feeling that he's not appreciated or whatever, and he leaves for another team, or he wishes to leave for another team, where can he go? There's nowhere to go. I mean, the only place that's possibly an option lately, and there's a lot of speculation about this one, is that George Russell see that Mercedes, his contract expires at the end of the year. It's not been renewed yet. Talk to me about the stories about Max Verstappen maybe going to Red Bull and George Russell, Max Verstappen going to Mercedes and George Russell going to Red Bull, and maybe where do you see Lando fitting in if he decides to leave McLaren?
Yeah, and just to complicate matters, and I sometimes I get a little bit irritated by the wild rumors that fly around in Formula One, but that's always been the case in the sport. One has to accept it as part of the sport, and one should actually enjoy it. And as I say, just to complicate matters a little bit more, Zach Brown has now said if there is a vacancy open in the team in the near future, he would welcome Carlos Sainz back. Because he says I've got his number, so if there's a possibility, he would certainly be considered. So again, as I say, to complicate the whole situation, if I can't see Lando throwing his toys out of the cot, quite frankly. I don't think he's that kind of driver. He has a long-term contract. I think he's a loyal kind of person. And I think, he will realize that, even if he's got some strong competition for the title for this season, from his teammate, that's to be expected. This is the top team at the moment, and why would you want to leave? If things don't go your way, you don't just, pack your stuff up and huff and puff and leave the team. But the rumors about Max Verstappen and George Russell seem to be, I'm not going to say it has some traction, but it doesn't seem to want to go away. Despite the fact that Toto Wolff has said on numerous occasions that he's quite happy with the lineup that he has at the moment, that he sees, in fact, he was quoted last week as saying there is at the moment, maybe the key phrase there, at the moment there is no threat to the future of this driver combination that they have. And George, of course, has not yet signed his contract or extension that is been expected all around. But it's very early in the season. I think there are a number of people, reporters maybe, expecting things to happen quicker than they would normally happen. There's no particular reason why any driver would want to renew a contract, or any team would want to renew a contract this early in the season. Normally, contract renewals happen, during the European summer, or even during the summer holiday in August. That's normally when the expected extensions and new contracts are signed. If it's after that, if George doesn't have a contract in his pocket after the summer break, I think then there are probably more grounds to worry about his future at the team. But at the moment, I mean, the guy is where? He's currently lying in fourth position in the championship, and he's only 26 points behind Oscar Piastri in the championship, and he's been very consistent. Why would Mercedes not renew his contract? Why would he want to leave the team? I think all of this stems probably from the fact that it is known that there's some disharmony in the Red Bull team with the performance of the car. Max has been quite vocal about the fact that the car is not performing the way that he would like to be. We, of course, know that they cannot at this point yet rely on a number 2 driver to deliver the points. So, people are saying there is an escape clause in his contract, and if as the season progresses, things don't work out for him, he might even take that up. But again, we've discussed this. Where would he go? We've discussed this about the Aston Martin option, various reasons why he should want to go there. I don't personally see that as a viable option. He might want to reunite with Adrian Newey. He may want to stay with Honda Power. Who knows? But these things are just too much up in the air at the moment. Lots of rumors doing the rounds. Lots of people, connecting dots that may not be able to be connected, or maybe, adding 2 plus 2 and getting 5, that sort of thing. So, but it's fun. It's always fun to talk about these sort of things.
Another rumor that seems to be, keep popping up is the fact that Lawrence Stroll is a bit unhappy with Adrian Newey deciding not to focus on the 2025 car at all. And it's going woefully bad. Aston Martin's the only team that's doing worse this year than they did last year, or at least the smallest improvement, if you want to call it that. What do you think about that? How much do you think that those rumors are? Any truth to that?
Look, I don't know. I mean, I'm not certainly an insider at Aston Martin. I would be surprised if Lawrence Stroll puts any pressure on Adrian Newey not to do anything that he doesn't want to do. I think he would probably, realize that would not be a good idea to make Newey unhappy so shortly after he started. And his job really has always been, I think the reason why they brought him there was to focus on the 2026 car. Andy Cowell has said, the team principal, he has said that Adrian may not be directly or heavily involved in the 2025 car, but he is involved in trying to improve the processes, the manufacturing processes and the design processes that they are employing for this year's car as well. So he might have a small peripheral effect on this year's car, but his job certainly is not to try and fix this year's disastrous car, which somebody else has also pointed out. Last race in Jeddah, they were the only car that didn't improve on their lap time from the year before. So I think, I think Aston Martin or the AMR 25 is probably running into the same kind of performance wall that we do find at other teams, where the margins of improvement and performance are so small that if you just do the smallest little thing could have an effect on it. So if you do something wrong that you don't even know you're doing it wrong, not in terms of setup, but in terms of designing aerodynamic surfaces, for instance, the margins of gaining downforce versus making the car undrivable, those margins are very, very, very small, as these cars are at the moment. We find that, that's the reason why, for instance, one of the reasons why Lewis Hamilton is struggling with this year's Ferrari, why even Lando Norris is struggling with this year's McLaren. And clearly even Fernando Alonso cannot, get the AMR 25 to do what it's supposed to do, what he expects it to do, because of that reason. Not that only that reason, but partly because of that reason. Many drivers are complaining that the car is the operating window or the performance window is so small that if you don't hit it, you miss it by a rather big margin. So I think that's the nature of these cars, and some teams are getting it better than other teams, and some teams are not, obviously. So I don't have the option. I don't have the solutions. I don't work there, fortunately, I think, because I can't
I'm
be
just
blamed
wondering
for that.
about that. I mean, I can understand you looking at 2026, but you don't want to be last. You don't want to be the team that doesn't, the only team that not improved on last year's time. I mean, actually slower than you were last year. I mean, that's a shocking indictment. I know Dan Calder's also left the team permanently. He was sort of demoted, shuffled along, and then he decided to leave. Another rumor that doesn't want to go away, we talked about this last week as well, and normally when team management or the owners, whatever, express their unconditional support, 2,000% support in the case of Fred Vasseur with Lewis Hamilton, you start to wonder what the story is, almost like a kiss of death. Lots of rumors about Lewis maybe, calling it a day at the end of this year, because he seems a bit dejected. We saw it last week, our caption was also, Lewis looks defeated, looks deflated. Do you think it's going to stick around?
He said on record, we did discuss it last week. I don't know, I'll repeat the same discussion, but he doesn't seem to have a solution. The team doesn't seem to have a solution. He's not able to get the most out of the car. He doesn't get the feeling out of the car that he would like to get the feeling out of the car. We must not underestimate when a driver, Lando has said the same thing, doesn't get the feeling that he wants to get out of the car, to be confident enough to drive the car to its limits. And we mustn't underestimate, that factor. The art of driving a Formula One car at its limits is absolutely based on feeling. It's got nothing to do with decisions, conscious decisions that drivers are making as to where they're going to brake and how they're going to turn in, how much they're going to turn the steering wheel, how much they're going to accelerate. They simply drive on instinct and feeling. That is the only way that you can get the most out of a Formula One car. And if the car doesn't give you the feeling that you can have confidence in it, then you cannot get the most out of the car. It's really as simple as that. There's no other way to describe that. So Lewis is not getting the feeling that he wants out of the car. I think also, again, I mentioned it last week. He's now new to this ground effect Ferrari. With its characteristics that he's not used to, or that he cannot adapt himself to as soon as he would like to. But at the same time, I cannot see him, just simply giving up and walking away. He's not that kind of person. I do think that he would probably also, in his decision going to Ferrari, would have said to himself, look, don't expect too much this year. Maybe expect a little bit more than what it's turning out to be. But let's focus on 2026 onwards. Let's hope that from there onwards, he's going to be able to get the most out of the car. And I still maintain Lewis is not the kind of guy. He's never been the kind of driver that just simply gives up and walks away.
Of course, this weekend, like I said, the Miami Grand Prix, lots of updates expected. We're not sure what's going to happen. Last year, McLaren brought their upgrades, and since they brought the upgrade, they just sort of shot the lights out. Lando got his first victory again as well, like you said. Do you know of any specific upgrades from any team that we're expecting this weekend?
No, but I do think that Ferrari needs to find some way, and I'm not sure that they will be able to do it, this weekend already. But they need to find a way of running that car as low to the ground as possible, and at the same time staying legal at the end of the race with their plank. I think that is mainly the reason why they haven't been able to perform as well as they would like to have performed after they were disqualified in where was it, in China. So after that, they had to run the car higher off the ground. And when we say higher, we talk about fractions of millimeters. We're not talking about centimeters or anything like that. But the ground clearance is a big factor in terms of ground effect. And if you can run the car as low as possible, you get better downforce or suction force, really. But then you run the risk of being found illegal. Your plank being found illegal, which is what happened in China. So they need to find a way, and they need to find a setup, or at least some kind of design change in their floor to do that. I'm not sure that they're going to bring that. I think most teams, at least of the front-running teams, maybe the top 5 or 6 teams, are going to bring some kind of an upgrade because they do want to be competitive. But I'm not aware of any big steps like we saw with McLaren last year at Miami.
The big question is, of course, are we going to see any more upgrades? Because everybody's sort of focusing on 2026, and quite a few of the teams have said they're not going to do any upgrades. They say that
Williams is the one. Williams is the one. They're saying, and they're using the expression, they're simply putting some plasters on the car at the moment because they are focusing on 2026. I think more so, and I think we've also mentioned this in the past, more so the cars from the second half of the field would probably not be too concerned about trying to move forward this year and focusing on next year. But you are in a championship situation in terms of the top 3 or 4 teams. They will be bringing upgrades throughout the season, but mostly those upgrades will be upgrades that would be applicable to next year's car as well. They are certainly not going to, I think, just simply bring something that will only work this year and not next year. They've got budget restrictions as well, so you're not going to waste any money on something like that. What you're going to do is you're going to design something for next year's car, and if it's applicable for this year's car, then it's good as well. And they will probably try to design something with the eye on being applicable for both this year and next year's car. I'm speculating, but to me that would make a lot of sense.
Now, we talked about Ferrari. Of course, another thing that Miami is well known for is special liveries. And we saw maybe V-Carb or Racing Bulls or whatever they call this week is going to be some sort of a pink car. They had a bit of pink last year as well. Stake is released a video that they're driving into some sort of custom shop in Miami. We don't know what's going to come out of there. But more interesting, and I'm going to put it on the screen here. We have no idea whether there's any validity to this car. A white Ferrari. Sort of we don't know if there's going to be. I was just interested to see this rendering floating around, and it does look like it sort of might be realistic. What's your thoughts of a white Ferrari?
Oh, I don't know about that. If they do it, it will be certainly something that everybody would talk about. I cannot remember a white Ferrari, at least a works Ferrari in white, ever in Formula One. Maybe some of the older viewers would recall something like that, but I don't. And it's definitely a departure from the traditional red Ferraris, but it will have an impact. It certainly will have an impact. I see the drivers are going to go with white outfits, overalls. So it's quite possible that would happen. And these kind of livery changes will normally happen after our recording. So I think we are speculating at the moment. Let's say a white Ferrari will certainly be interesting, much more so, I think, than a pink Red Bulls.
Oh, but a white Ferrari will also be better than a red Ferrari with blue wheel caps from last year. What a disappointment that car was. I mean,
and had blue overalls last year too. Yes,
it was so bad. Yeah. No, anyway, wouldn't expect a professional team to do such a botch up of a livery. Let's talk about the race quickly. It's an exciting race. It started, the first race was held in 2022. It's a sprint weekend again. What can we expect from the race itself?
Well, as I said earlier on, they're going to run with softer tires than last year this time. The same 3 compounds than last week or 2 weeks ago in Jeddah, but it's one step softer in Miami than what they had last year. So, and apparently it's expected to be very hot again. So high temperatures, softer rubber. Obviously, probably high humidity because it's at the coast, and the possibility, not a probability, but a possibility of some rain during the course of the weekend. So all of those things mixed together with a sprint weekend where you only have the one hour of testing, where you need to figure out what tire you're going to use both for the sprint race and for the Grand Prix proper. You've got to work out, your tire degradation. Are you going to, because in the sprint race you only use one tire. There are no pit stops there. So which tire are you going to go on? Are you going to start on the medium, which was last year's hard tire? Are you going to start on the soft, which was last year's medium tire, or you're going to start on the soft tire, which is a step softer? That's for the sprint. So that could mix things up nicely for the sprint. Last year was a bit of a bore fest, as most of these sprints are. I've never really bought into it, but it's there. Last year, if I recall, the top 6 finished in the order that they started in the sprint. And then everything changed in the Grand Prix, because we saw a lot of overtaking. There was a safety car. There was the Magnussen and Logan Sargent incident, which brought out the safety car, and that also brought the end of Logan Sargent's career, I think, effectively at Williams. Those sort of things can happen. Having a look at the circuit itself, it seems to be, an interesting mix of medium turn corners. I can only see the one or two corners that are basically just part of a straight towards the end of the lap. Top speed is going to play a role. DRS is going to play a role. We see teams now these days using the DRS detection zones or detection points more tactically than they used to do in the past. You don't necessarily use the first one, but you stay behind so you can use the second one. We saw that in Jeddah last year, and Hamilton and Verstappen had tended to do that, I think, on a number of occasions in that 2021 season. Tactical use of DRS is an interesting way of using the DRS system. And as I said last year, there were lots of overtaking. There certainly was good racing in last year's race. So I think we're going to expect the same thing this year. Maybe we will see 2 stops with the softer tires. That will mix things up nicely. So safety car, almost a certainty on a track like this. So certainly something to look forward to.
Well, the one thing we know about warmer temperatures, the McLaren is supposed to be better at warmer temperatures. So at Jeddah, the race was at night, and the gap wasn't that big, and Max was able to, almost beat Piastri to the corner. I say almost, and he could have won that race if it wasn't for that incident. So, I mean, the fact that it's going to be a day race with high temperatures should count in McLaren's favor.
Yeah, also, I think, the Red Bull doesn't seem to favor medium speed corners. The handling characteristics of that car doesn't seem to be all that good for medium speed corners, the oversteer and understeer combination. They are quick and fast corners, but there's not a lot of fast corners on this track. So yes, I think, given everything, McLaren should still be the favorites. To at least be right on the podium, and I think there's no doubt about it that the McLarens should both be able to challenge for the win
and for the championship, which is more and more.
Well, yeah, the championship is continuing on, so yes.
Yeah, but I mean, let's say Piastri leads or Lando leads, and Piastri says, I'm quicker than him. Let me pass. What are they going to do?
Well, that's the question I posed right at the beginning. What are they going to do?
Right.
Drivers. I think it's too early in the season to favor one and to use team orders. It's far too early for that. Although Ferrari did that one year after, I think, the 5th or 6th race. They ordered poor old Rubens to step aside for was it 2001? Yeah, it was 2001. And then they tried to do the opposite in the Austrian race, 2001, and the uproar after that. Anyway, so that's reminiscing of the past. I think it's far too early in the season for any team, for their championship contenders, for any team to start ordering team orders. They must just allow them to race and trust the 2 drivers that they won't take each other out. But again, Zach Brown has said it's to be expected, maybe towards the end of the season, that the 2 of them could get entangled, but they will deal with it as and when it happens. But it's possible, but I don't think at this early stage of the season we're going to see anything like that.
Well, we're coming to the end of this video, and while we're at it, and the other big news is that Cadillac was now officially welcomed as an engine supplier for 2029. Surprisingly enough, we thought it was going to be 2028. Any idea where that is?
Well, General Motors actually was, that's the company that was officially allowed into Formula One as an engine supplier. Initially, it was going to be from 2028. And incidentally, Cadillac, the actual team, the Formula One team is set for a big launch this weekend. I think it's going to happen on Saturday. So at least then we will know what the car's liveries are going to look like. We don't know what the car is going to look like because it's going to be a 2026 car, but we're at least going to have a clear indication of what the Cadillac Formula One car is going to be painted like next year. Anyway, so GM is now going to be an official Formula One power unit supplier. Initially, as I said, the plan was that they would join from 2028 onwards to supply the Cadillac Formula One team with engines. I'm not sure why GM would use a Cadillac brand anyway. This is just purely aside. Why don't they use the Corvette? Why don't they use a Corvette brand in Formula One? Anyway, so because you've got Aston Martin, you've got Ferrari, you've got McLaren, why don't you join Formula One with your brand that is at least in the same market? The Corvette brand.
Well,
but anyway, so that's
Corvette now. That's the thing. I think Chevrolet.
Yeah, but they're going to run a Cadillac. I mean, that's.
No, I agree. I'm with you. I also wondered about it. I mean,
that's like having a Rolls Royce. Yeah. That's like having a Rolls Royce or a Maybach or something, as a Formula. Yeah, but anyway, okay. So, but the intriguing thing is that that they would have been the supplier for Cadillac from 2028 onwards, but now they've been allowed from 2029 onwards, and obviously it would not have been. They would have asked for that. They would not have. It wouldn't have been a one-sided decision by the FIA. But the interesting question now is why from 2029? Because in 2030, that cycle of power unit is going to come to an end. They will have to have a new engine for, let's say, engine. We don't know what the 2031 engine is going to be like. Is it going to be, just simply, a hybrid V8 or V10, or are they going to continue with a V6 turbo, whatever? We don't know that, and that's the question. So why would they now develop from now onwards an engine or a power unit that will be suitable for the new regulations that come in 2026 and will last until 2030, which means that they will they will now spend the next 3 years or so to develop an engine to come in 2029, and then they have to then develop a brand new engine along with everybody else, of course, for 2031 onwards. And the speculation is at the moment that they might be playing a bit of a gamble here, and that they might be gambling on the fact that the 2031 engine regulations would be a simpler engine formula, where they could simply just come in and use current technology simply just maybe an existing engine that they can just adapt very easily to the new dispensation. But we don't know what is going to happen in 2031. That tin has been kicked down the street, so to speak, by the Formula One Commission and the FIA after their discussions last week. There was a huge meeting last week of the Formula One Commission, and this Formula One Commission, of course, includes both, not only the teams, but also the FIA and the engine manufacturers, and I think a few others. I think Pirelli is involved there, some promoters, some race promoters are involved there as well. And they decided they are going to stick with the 2026 regulations. They are not going to bring it to an end early, as was speculated upon previously. So that is going to remain. What they are going to try and do are two things. One is, as far as the competitiveness of the various engine manufacturers is concerned, they're going to allow anybody who lags behind in 2026 to catch up by various means. So they'll need to adapt the regulations accordingly. So they don't want to have a repeat of the Mercedes 2014 situation. So teams that are demonstrably behind in the performance of the engines, and this does not include the performance of the chassis. It has to be demonstrably because of the engine that lacks power. In other words, it's got nothing to do with the aerodynamic performance of the car. They would probably, and these have not been finalized yet, they would probably be able to use more wind tunnel time or more, computer time, or they might even get a bit of a raise in the engine budget cap in order to be able to catch up. Because Formula One clearly has decided that engine is not going to be a distinguishing factor in terms of performance anymore. It's always been like that, but seemingly from next year onwards, Formula One is not going to be a sport in which the engine makes a difference in performance. That is another subject for another day. But the other thing they also want to try and avoid next year is that on the sporting side, that the engines would not run out of steam, so to speak, on some tracks where the straights are very long. And there's a big fear in Formula One that is actually going to happen, because they fear that on those circuits there will not be enough time around the lap to be able to generate enough power in the to store enough power in the batteries to deploy that power down the long straights. And that would mean that the drivers would have to come off the accelerator because they will be running out of electric power. There's a big fear that that's going to happen. It's obviously not been proven yet. We'll probably have to wait and see what happens, but something that they wanted to try and avoid now, and they did not come to a decision on that. Some people suggested that what they do is, instead of being able to deploy the full 350 kilowatts of electrical power down, around the lap during a race, that they would be limited to only 200 kilowatt in order to be able to use electric power right throughout the lap. That has not been decided yet. Some teams are for it, some teams are not obviously against it. So that is a factor that could play havoc in races next year.
Yeah, interesting. Toto Wolff is the one that's the loudest voice against it. Clearly, Mercedes is also rumored to have the best engine for next year.
I think that's the conclusion people come to, because Toto doesn't want any changes to next year's regulations. They must be ahead, and because Christian Horner, who's coming in with Ford next year with their own engines for next year, Red Bull Ford engines, because Christian Horner wants this change, therefore that means that they are behind. It doesn't necessarily follow. It's a good indication probably, but it doesn't necessarily follow.
No. All right. Well, next week we'll talk about what happened at this weekend, and I'm excited to see this. I want to see that McLaren is doing, and I'm also looking forward to the special livery. It's always exciting to see some once-offs.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Hendrik. Thanks, man. Talk to you next week.
Yes.
The F1 Focus Podcast with MV Welman and Hendrik Verwoerd.